Meghan Markle has unfairly got a reputation for being a bit of a diva, but royal insiders say she's only ever made one demand. Don't leave her alone with Prince Andrew.
Say Miss Meghan Markle is on the American program Suits.
Yes, Wednesdays, 8 p.m, USA Network.
The only difference between that show and this is people watch this one.
If you had lunch with Meghan Markle, you'd be stunned at how dumb she was. Not because she's black, because I wouldn't think she was black if I looked at her, because she's an actress who was on the show Suits.
Authentically, organically want to share. I go back to the authenticity, right? It's what I love and it's what I want to share. I wanted to do what felt authentic, but also to be authentic.
You're a cold-hearted woman.
Harry and Meghan are leaving the palace to become financially independent. And you see, this is what happens when you bring the first black woman into the royal family. Yeah. She looked at Harry and she's like, "Nigga, you need to get a job. You need a job. You a grown-ass man. You can't still be living in your mama's house, Harry."
Meghan Markle is somebody who obviously, at least for a period of time, was a close associate of Prince Andrew, and hence is in a position to perhaps have seen what he did, and perhaps, if not, to have seen what he did, to have heard people talk about it.
You're a cold-hearted woman, Sonia. I'll fucking show you, dying. I'm leaving you. Is it a weekend at Bernie's situation, Sonia? What the fuck are you talking about? No, he's fine. He's signing the documents.
And he'll say M and you'll say H and your friends say M and it just is a thing.
It's a thing.
And do you both love it?
Yes, and I like nicknames a lot.
Are you fucking dumb?
What could it be? A mystery for the ages.
The whole privacy angle gets harder and harder to buy every time Meghan Markle steps back into the spotlight and then acts surprised that people are watching again. That is the part critics keep dragging non-stop. They look at the interviews, the polished appearances, the carefully timed launches, and they see someone saying one thing while selling another. To them, this is not about peace or quiet. It is about control, image, and keeping the camera locked exactly where she wants it. That is why the backlash never really dies down.
I've already settled it for myself, so flattery and criticism go down the same drain. Nothing negative about being a feminist. It's not the F word.
Meghan Markle is, of course, a lifelong feminist, which she's demonstrated by marrying a prince and giving up her job.
Meghan's critics say she has spent years cleaning up the parts of her story that make her look bad, cutting out what hurts her image, polishing what helps her brand, and throwing shade at anyone who does not clap on cue. In their eyes, every chapter gets retold until it sounds smoother, safer, and way more flattering than the version people heard before. And when those versions do not match, people start looking at everything sideways. One comic tore straight through that polished image and called her the fakest feminist alive, and that line stuck because it echoed what a lot of critics were already saying. Whether people think that is fair or way too harsh, the reason it hit is simple. Meghan has built a public image around being authentic, strong, and deeply wronged. But her opponents argue that it always circles back to the same script. My truth, my pain, my struggle. What they say is missing is accountability. They do not see much self-reflection, and that is exactly why every contradiction gets blasted the second it appears. And that was only the start of it. Jimmy Carr did not just toss out a few throwaway jokes and move on.
My friends have to read those things. Like, I have real best friends, the same ones since I was 17.
Really?
You know, like, I'm a real mom. I choose to go and do school pickup and drop off, but I do that under a landscape that is created that forgets that I'm a real person. My kids will see those magazines, and we all know moms gossip.
She is a malignant narcissist who cannot get enough of herself while she simultaneously plays the victim.
No, you're not a fucking victim. What are you talking about?
Sure.
He went right at the whole Harry and Meghan machine, the branding, the performance, the endless talk of freedom, healing, trauma, privacy, and reinvention. In that lane of comedy, the goal is not to be soft. The goal is to hit the image where it looks strongest and let the crowd decide whether it still stands. For people already fed up with the Sussex media cycle, that roast felt less like comedy and more like a savage public check. That is why the punchlines hit so hard. To critics, the jokes worked because they were sitting on top of a bigger frustration people have had for years. Harry says he left royal life to escape pressure, rules, and control. He wanted freedom. He wanted room to breathe. He wanted out of a system where every move was managed. But then people look at what came next and see production deals, glossy interviews, prestige documentaries, timed launches, strategic appearances, and a brand that still feeds off royal history while claiming to reject it. That contradiction is exactly where the laughs get sharp. So the clapback almost writes itself. In the eyes of critics, Harry did not escape structure. He just swapped one system for another one with softer lighting, ring lights, and a Montecito glow on top. Buckingham Palace got traded for California branding. Formal protocol got traded for image management.
Harry, the ginger, formerly known as Prince, became the first British royal to give evidence in court for 130 years. It's disgusting the way the press have tried to manipulate, gaslight, and control Harry. I mean, who do they think they are? Meghan? Well, you never stood a fucking chance, did you?
Prince William or Prince Harry?
Prince William or Prince Harry? Well, the royal family, right, if you can imagine, they're like our Kardashians. Prince Harry is very much our Kanye. He occasionally dresses as a Nazi, and he fucked up.
Instead of royal handlers, critics say there is now a different kind of control at work, one built around optics, headlines, market value, and the constant need to look independent while still cashing in on royal relevance. That is the part people keep roasting, and honestly, it is the part he has never really outrun. The image gets even messier when you notice how often Harry still circles back to the very world he says he wanted to leave behind. That is what makes critics roll their eyes so hard. If royal life was such a suffocating trap, why does every major interview, memoir passage, documentary, or public talking point end up right back at the palace gates? Why is the past still doing all the heavy lifting for the present? People catch that. They notice when somebody says they are done with a chapter but keeps selling tickets to the same chapter again and again. At a certain point, public sympathy starts turning into plain irritation. Harry's critics say he talks like he is the only person who has ever dealt with grief, pressure, family drama, disappointment.
Harry's a fucking twat. I do. I think he's a fucking twat. He's a whining, whinging, complaining, woe is me, I'm the only one that's ever had mental problems. You've been handed the world and every major contract, you had podcasts, you have all of this, and you didn't deliver because
there's nothing to deliver.
Yeah, because you don't have it. And that's okay. And I think they do have a right to privacy, but that doesn't seem to me what they're looking for. Everybody's fucking life is hard.
Yeah,
you were the prince of a goddamn country who dressed up as a fucking Nazi, and now you're trying to come back as the Pope?
Curtsy, the thing she said about medieval times, her lunch with the Queen was like medieval times, which, as you know, is a Disney-type entertainment place for kids. And it's just so horribly disrespectful and just a wine fest. Cuddly, lovey, holding hands, going everywhere together. It's so disingenuous. It's like, come on.
Or pain. That is where some viewers completely switch off. Life is hard for everybody. Families are chaotic. Regret is common. Pain is not rare. So when Harry speaks like his suffering should forever explain every contradiction, critics hit back fast and say the world is full of people carrying pain without turning it into a non-stop global pity campaign. That is also why celebrity comments from people like Kelly Osbourne get folded into the bigger pylon. It is not just one joke, one show, or one rude line. It becomes a full chain reaction. Every new criticism connects to older resentment, and every old resentment gives the next joke even more punch. That is what makes the whole thing snowball. By the time Jimmy Carr jumps in, he is not starting from zero. He is stepping onto a stage already loaded with years of public annoyance, and he knows exactly where to hit for maximum damage. And then the focus swings right back to Meghan, because that is where so much of the heat stays parked. Critics keep saying the same thing. You cannot campaign for privacy while constantly stepping into public view with another carefully rolled out project, appearance, podcast, interview, or red carpet moment. That is the contradiction they believe defines her whole public image. In their eyes, it is like loudly saying you hate attention while making sure every room notices your entrance, your pose, your message, and your next rebrand. That is why they call the act obvious, staged, and impossible to ignore. To those critics, the bigger issue is not fame by itself. It is selective fame. It is wanting the spotlight only on favourable terms. It is wanting exposure without scrutiny, applause without pushback, sympathy without suspicion, and total control over how every chapter gets remembered. But public life does not work like that, especially when the audience has receipts and the internet never forgets a messy timeline. Once people think the story is being managed too hard, they start comparing, replaying, digging, and asking what else got cleaned up. That is where the whole saga starts looking less like a noble escape story and more like an endless prestige reality show in the eyes of her critics. The tears, the trauma language, the palace fallout, the family distance, the branding pivots, the podcasts, the documentaries, the lifestyle launches, the red carpets, the reinventions, all of it gets read as one giant rolling spectacle. And when Jimmy Carr punched right into that idea, critics felt like he had finally said the quiet part out loud. Not with royal caution, not with polished PR wording, but with the kind of blunt timing that turns discomfort into laughter. Then came the Wallis Simpson comparison, and that is where the historical sting really kicked in. Jimmy Carr was not pulling that name out of thin air. Wallis Simpson still carries a controversial place in royal history because of how strongly she became linked to a king giving up the throne. So when Meghan gets compared to her, the meaning is huge. It is not just about romance, it is about disruption, upheaval, exile, influence, and a relationship so explosive that it changes the course of a royal institution. That is why the comparison still hits. Even when people argue over whether it is fair. Look, a lot of people believe love can justify major sacrifice, even a crown if somebody truly wants that path. But Meghan's critics insist love was never the full story here. In their view, love was the opening, the key, the move that unlocked something much bigger. Once she was inside the royal orbit, they say everything started shifting fast. The profile grew, the tension deepened, the media value exploded, and then even the exit became part of the product. They leave the royals, boom, and suddenly the breakaway becomes the brand, the grievance becomes the money move, and the whole drama turns into a business model that still feeds off the same palace they claim to be done with. Once that Oprah interview landed, the floodgates seemed to swing wide open, and that is exactly why so many critics say the whole royal exit started to look less like a personal break and more like the beginning of a giant commercial rollout. First came the interview that shook headlines everywhere, then the Spotify deal, then Netflix came through with a massive check. And to a lot of people watching from the outside, it all happened so smoothly it barely looked accidental at all. The timing felt sharp, the sequence felt polished, and the pattern felt way too clean for critics to ignore. And Jimmy Carr is not some lone voice out there taking random shots for attention. He is just one of many public figures, commentators, and critics who have been hammering the same point for a long time now. Their argument is that Harry and Meghan did not really walk away from the royal story. They took that story with them, repackaged it, upgraded the lighting, gave it a more Hollywood polish, and sold it back to the public piece by piece for millions. That is the part people keep locking onto, because once the pattern becomes obvious, the whole "we just wanted peace" message starts sounding a lot less convincing. To their critics, this stopped looking like a dramatic escape a long time ago and started looking like a business plan with perfect branding wrapped around it. They were not leaving the royal drama behind in silence. They were turning it into interviews, documentaries, podcasts, books, And headline after headline after headline, every wound became a talking point. Every family clash became material. Every complaint seemed to land inside a bigger machine that kept feeding the same story to the public while insisting it wanted distance from the attention. That contradiction is exactly why the backlash has stayed so loud. Jimmy went right at that contradiction and did not even pretend to soften the hit. His whole point was that they did not reject the royal narrative. They simply found a new market for it. In his framing, they stepped out of one institution only to build a media brand around explaining why they stepped out of it. That is why so many viewers laughed, because the joke did not feel random to them. It felt like somebody finally saying out loud what critics had been muttering for years. The royal fallout did not disappear. It became a product, and a profitable one at that. That is also why the money angle keeps coming back so hard in the criticism. Jimmy called them out over spending and privilege because, in the eyes of many critics, there has always been a deep disconnect between the struggles Harry and Meghan describe and the luxury that surrounds those struggles. They talk about pain, pressure, and trauma, and those things can be real, but then people look at the lifestyle, the deals, the mansion, the teams around them, the elite circles, and the multi-million-dollar contracts, and the sympathy starts getting tangled up with frustration. That is where the entitlement accusation keeps getting louder. Critics look at that whole setup and say there is just no awareness of how this sounds to ordinary people. Regular people deal with family drama too. Regular people deal with anxiety, public embarrassment, betrayal, stress, and media pressure on smaller scales every single day. But they do not get massive production deals to turn their hardship into polished storytelling events. They do not have luxury estates to disappear into when the cameras are off. They do not get a giant platform every time they want to revisit old wounds. That is why so many critics say Harry and Meghan are asking for sympathy from a place of enormous privilege without ever fully acknowledging how that lands. Then Jimmy pushed the criticism even further and took aim at Harry himself, and that is where the roast became extra sharp. He pointed out that Harry has never really seemed in charge of his own life, and that observation hits because it connects to a public image that has followed Harry for years now. First, there was the palace, the rules, the hierarchy, the expectations, the institution, and the family machine. Harry was always seen as a prince inside a system bigger than himself. But then critics say the moment he left that system, he did not suddenly become independent in the way he talks about. He just moved into another version of being managed. That is the line Jimmy exploited, and it landed because people instantly understood what he meant. In that view, Harry has always had somebody guiding him, shaping him, managing him, or steering the direction of his life. First the palace, then the royal household, then family expectations. And now critics say the same pattern exists in California, only with a very different style and a much flashier look. The faces changed, the setting changed, the branding changed, but the image of Harry as somebody who still needs a structure around him never really went away. So when Jimmy paints him as the kind of person who cannot function without a manager, the joke cuts because it plays into something people already suspect. Critics say Harry often comes across like somebody who needs a script, a handler, a framework, and a strong personality nearby to tell him where to stand, what to say, and how to explain the latest chapter of his life. Whether that is completely fair or not, it is an image that has hardened over time, and once an image like that sticks, every interview just seems to reinforce it even more. From that angle, Harry's life starts to look, to critics, like one long chain of command with different names attached to it. First, it was the palace, then his grandmother and royal duty, then the California era. Instead of truly escaping control, critics say he just swapped one type of control for another. Buckingham Palace gave way to Montecito. Royal protocol gave way to lifestyle branding. Traditional palace discipline gave way to media strategy, image management, and glossy messaging. That is why people keep joking that Harry did not break free. He just changed uniforms and kept the same problem. And that brings the conversation right back to the bigger issue fueling so much of the backlash, because for many people, this is not really about hate at all. It is about trust. It is about whether Harry and Meghan still sound believable when they tell their story. Critics say the reason public patience has thinned is because everything now feels monetized. The pain feels packaged. The family clashes feel serialized. The emotional disclosures feel timed. The trauma sounds real to some listeners, but to critics, it now arrives wrapped in such an obvious commercial machine that the sincerity gets drowned out by the rollout. That is why people keep saying they turned their problems into a business. One issue becomes an interview, another becomes a documentary, another becomes a book chapter, another becomes a podcast segment, and another becomes a new wave of press built around old resentment. Critics do not see silence, healing, or stepping back. They see repeated monetization of the same royal fracture, and each new project makes that criticism stronger because it confirms the pattern they already thought they saw. That is why so many people no longer react with shock when a new deal appears. They react with eye rolls. Harry also gets hit hard because critics say he speaks as if his suffering stands apart from everybody else's. That is another reason why the sympathy gap has grown so wide. A lot of viewers hear him talk and feel like he presents his pain as uniquely tragic, uniquely misunderstood, uniquely impossible for others to grasp. But the world is full of people carrying grief, trauma, mental strain, family fracture, and public shame in some form or another. They do not all get global platforms to process it in million-dollar installments. So for critics, Harry's tone can start to feel less like vulnerability and more like endless self-focus. And then there is Meghan, whose critics say she almost never admits fault in a clean, direct way. That perception has become one of the biggest reasons the backlash keeps following her. Every awkward moment, every contradiction, every questioned timeline, every public dispute seems, in the eyes of critics, to get reframed until the story bends back in her favour. They say there is always a new spin, always a new angle, always a new explanation that places blame somewhere else while protecting the image she wants the public to hold on to. That is why her detractors find her so exhausting, because they do not see much self-accountability in the storytelling at all. In their view, every mistake gets twisted into a misunderstanding. Every criticism becomes proof that she is being targeted, and every messy chapter somehow turns into material for a bigger brand narrative. That is the part critics cannot let go of. They do not just object to the messaging, they object to the repetition of the messaging. It is always the same pattern to them. A cycle where public conflict becomes more content and where accountability never seems to arrive without getting filtered through a polished PR layer first. That is why they say everything just becomes more material for the next platform moment. Even the way critics compare Harry and Meghan to Prince William says a lot about how public perception has shifted. Jimmy Carr might have been going for laughs with Harry and Meghan, but the tone changes the second William enters the frame. The sarcasm drops, the energy changes, the respect becomes obvious. That matters because it reflects a wider split in how the two brothers are seen now. Harry gets cast by critics as reactive, bitter, overly managed, and trapped in an endless grievance loop. William gets cast as stable, grounded, serious, and focused on the role in front of him. That contrast has become brutal for Harry. Prince William gets praise because, to many viewers, he looks like somebody who understands duty and accepts it without turning every burden into a media event. He comes across as solid, he looks measured, he seems grounded in the role rather than at war with it. That image has worked strongly in his favour, especially when placed beside Harry's constant public retellings of palace pain. Critics see William as somebody who gets the job and takes it seriously, while they see Harry as somebody still using the job he rejected as the fuel source for everything he says and sells. Right or wrong, that is the comparison now sitting in the public mind. And this is where the privacy argument really falls apart for critics, because they say Harry and Meghan keep asking to be judged by a private life standard while behaving like public figures who are actively scheduling the spotlight. They begged for privacy. They moved countries for it. They built their whole exit around the claim that they wanted space, peace, distance, and freedom from constant scrutiny. But then came the documentary, the interviews, the podcast, the public speaking, the glossy appearances, and the repeated need to explain themselves on massive platforms. That is why critics laugh when the word privacy comes up now, because to them it sounds completely upside down. If Harry and Meghan had truly gone quiet and lived the low-key life they claimed to want, the public conversation around them might look very different today. But that did not happen, and critics will not stop pointing that out. Instead of disappearing, they kept stepping back into the spotlight in bigger and more polished ways. Instead of withdrawing from the royal narrative, they kept circling back to it. Instead of shutting the door, they kept reopening it whenever there was a new platform, a new project, or a new reason to revisit the same old family war. That is why critics say they are not escaping attention. They are actively booking it. At this point, for many viewers, the victim act no longer lands the way it once did. They see through it, or at least they believe they do. They do not see two people quietly rebuilding after a painful break. They see two highly media-savvy public figures who found a very profitable lane in retelling the same conflict over and over again. They do not see distance from drama. They see branding through drama, and that is why every comedian, every royal watcher, and every commentator who goes after them still finds such a large audience ready to listen and clap along. So the real issue now is not whether Harry and Meghan can still make noise, because clearly they can. The issue is whether the public still believes the noise comes from honesty instead of strategy. Critics increasingly say it is strategy, and that is why the jokes keep landing. The backlash keeps building, and the frustration keeps boiling over every time another project appears with the same old message, wrapped in a slightly different package. That is the trap they now seem stuck in, because once the public starts reading every move as calculated, even genuine moments begin to lose their impact. At this point, they are not running from the spotlight in the eyes of critics. They are lining it up, stepping into it, and acting shocked when people notice. And that is why the public mood around them has become so sharp, so skeptical, and so openly tired. The whole world, at least from the perspective of their detractors, now sees the pattern for what it is and is no longer pretending otherwise. That is why every new roast feels less like a surprise and more like another chapter in a backlash that keeps getting louder. Comment if you are done with the non-stop Harry and Meghan drama and the same recycled victim narrative critics keep calling out, like if Jimmy Carr said what a lot of viewers have been thinking for a long time now. And subscribe, because this royal fallout, this celebrity chaos, and this very public mess are clearly nowhere near finished yet.